As a young New Jersey lawyer, Nelson Johnson became fascinated with the history of Atlantic City. His obsession led to a book, and that book became the basis for HBO's hit series, Boardwalk Empire.
I have to come to you.
Johnson tells the history of Atlantic City going back to its beginnings in the 1850s when the first trains arrived. But the city's Prohibition-era political boss, Nucky Johnson, is at the center of the story.
I represented the Atlantic City Planning Board from 1980 to 82, and I went into City Hall knowing the place was corrupt. It wasn't that long before people had gone to jail. And what I didn't anticipate was how dysfunctional the city was. I couldn't make sense of why can't this place get anything done. My instincts are those of a bookworm. I had my first library card before I was in kindergarten, and so I said, let me go to the library. And there's books on the boardwalk, books on Atlantic City as a tryout town for Broadway, books on vaudeville, books on fire companies, books on hotels, the books on horses on the beach, books after book after book. But when I got through about a year and a half reading all these books, I had a couple observations. One, nobody ever touched on the town's corruption. It's right in their face, but nobody's writing about it. Two, nobody had a real feel for the importance of the African American community and the critical role that it played in the town. And then three, nobody ever put the whole thing together. There wasn't one book that you could read that started with 1854 when the trains came and worked up to the present. So I said, that's very interesting. But I continued reading about Nucky Johnson, and the more that I read him, I said, you know, he's not just a book, he's a movie. I really should try to write this book.
I have my territory. South to Cape May, north to Asbury Park, west to Trenton. I have the casinos, the numbers, and the wire. I'm not looking for anything else.
Haven't we had this conversation?
I didn't ask for trouble.
There are some fascinating differences between Johnson's historical account of Nucky and HBO's dramatic reimagining.
I look back at Atlantic City's history, it's pretty obvious to somebody who's, I think, objective, is that corruption in Atlantic City was organic. It was perfectly natural, and it was needed in order for the town to be successful. Old Atlantic City had a window of opportunity of anywhere from 10 to 14 weeks in order to make a buck during good weather from vacationers. And most of those vacationers were out of Philadelphia. And Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love, was also one of the driest cities in the nation. And so when they got to Atlantic City, it was a place to have, a wonderful good time. In the very beginning of the book, I quote a gentleman who came to this town around 1900 and saw the town through its many years of popularity, a gentleman by the name of Murray Fredericks, and in pressing him for why was Atlantic City so corrupt, his response was, if the people who came to town had wanted Bible readings, we'd have given them that. But no one ever asked for Bible readings. They wanted booze, broads, and gambling, so that's what we gave them. And where you had the full flower of Nucky Johnson and Atlantic City coming to bloom is during Prohibition. But what a lot of people can't appreciate is that Prohibition didn't pop out of the ground like a mushroom. Prohibition was preceded by what we call the Bishop's Laws. And the Bishop's Laws for about 30 years before Prohibition said no booze on Sunday. And Atlantic City said, what do you mean no booze on Sunday? That's our busiest day of the week. So Atlantic City began very faithfully and annually violating the law one day a week on Sunday to violate the Bishop's Laws. So when Prohibition comes along, it's not a big leap for them to go from violating the law one day a week to 7 days a week. And so when that happened, Atlantic City really did then become a magnet for tourists and conventioneers. That's why Convention Hall was built, to accommodate the business groups that were coming here during Prohibition. Nucky was complicated, but he was generous, friendly. He was corrupt. He violated the law. He was a womanizer, but he was loved by the people of this community.
Mr. Hewlett?
Yeah? Mr. O'Banion wants his money.
I'll have it tomorrow.
And according to Nelson Johnson, he was not the violent person portrayed in the HBO series.
Nucky Johnson was so powerful that he didn't need to be violent. Using violence is admitting that you can't get your way simply because of who you are. When you're forced to use violence, it's an admission of weakness. I had an older woman relate to me a story about a business that her father owned, which was a laundry. And her father had had a run-in with Nucky Johnson over some issue. A week later, people started coming into the laundry, getting their clothes and not leaving any off. And within about 2 weeks' time, he had no laundry to take care of and he had no customers. That's power, because you had the entire community supporting you. So Nucky didn't need to be violent. He could squash you like a bug just by having the community overwhelm you.
I talked to Lolly. He's expecting you. No limit at the table.
That's thoughtful.
Call it a thank you.
It's unique in this respect. Nucky Johnson took the 2 rings of power. He took the people who were the purveyors of vice. He took those people, whether it was the guy running the illegal bar, the person running the brothel, the person running the gambling house, and he took the political organization and he made them a single ring. In many cities in the first half of the 20th century, you have the 2 rings of power doing business with one another, but you don't have them merging. So he was not only the head racketeer of the community, he was the head political person of the community. And that's what made him so special. After World War II, you had air travel to the masses, you had swimming pools, you had resorts emerging all around the country. So Atlantic City developed a whole lot of competition that it wasn't ready for. Casino gambling was viewed as a cure-all. There isn't any such thing as a cure-all. Prohibition was a big boost, but it wasn't the whole story. What made Atlantic City great in the past, and what hopefully will make it great in the future, because people seem to be understanding us, was one word: spectacle. This was the place where crazy things happened, and people came in droves to see them. You know, whether it was the diving horse,
or boxing cats, for example. But there were also Broadway tryouts and concerts with superstars like John Philip Sousa, Rudy Vallee, and Louis Armstrong.
Atlantic City was the place where many major manufacturers came to do specials concerning, their product.
And of course, there was the Miss America pageant, which got its start in 1921.
Atlantic City was this town of spectacle for a lot of years, and if that can be captured, and I think there are people trying to do that, then Atlantic City certainly has a great future ahead of it.